The seventh question that Bryan Denlinger challenges Pastor Anderson with is, could you please give one reference in the Bible where the words the tribulation or the great tribulation are used as a title for this coming time period? Well, again, Bryan is using a straw man argument to try to say that a rapture that takes place after the tribulation is wrong, because technically after the tribulation is used in the context of those days, thereby showing after the tribulation is a description of a time frame, not a title. But I say to this, big deal, because the argument comes down to viewing the chapter as being about the rapture, with the angels gathering together Christ's elect. If you view that as the rapture, which I do, then you don't have a problem. The terminology that you're using is secondary to the fact of what actually is happening in the verses. On technicality, Bryan is correct by pointing out that when it says after the tribulation of those days, yeah, that's a description, not a title. But that doesn't prove that the rapture does not take place, in verses 29 to 31 of Matthew 24. It doesn't prove that at all. This is just a separate point altogether from the rapture itself, as far as when it takes place. For instance, we use words that are not in the Bible, but yet they are good words, or at least biblically based words, such as the word millennium and the word Trinity. Neither of those words, to my knowledge, are found in the King James Bible, but yet we use them all the time to describe Bible doctrines, because they have a concrete and a precise meaning. So, when you talk about an after the tribulation rapture, yeah, on a technicality, that's used in the context of a description, but if you view the chapter as being about the rapture, there's no issue whatsoever, because you know that everything in verses 28 through on up have to be fulfilled first. The key event being the abomination of desolation, which we know takes place basically the midpoint of the 7 years before the millennium, viewing a traditional understanding of Daniel's 70th week. So this doesn't prove a pre-trib rapture. This does not prove a post-tribulation, pre-wrath rapture. And by the way, I don't think it's a stretch whatsoever to think that just because Matthew 24:29 is a description, that this is going to negate our terminology, that we're using wrong terminology. I don't think it's unreasonable at all to just say, okay, everything leading up to this is the tribulation, and everything after this is something separate. So there's no real point being made by Bryan here. This is just trying to pull out any type of argument against the biblical view of when the rapture takes place, and somehow then conclude that there must be a pre-trib rapture. That's a wrong conclusion. When in reality, you should simply conclude that the most accurate way of saying is after the tribulation of those days, and then that's describing a time of great tribulation that will begin with the abomination of desolation, and then the rapture takes place, the gathering together of the elect, which is the saints, which is saved people, whether they be Jew or Gentile.